So this new absolute Wonder Woman is going to have to defend the city against a kaiju of death, and may just have to sacrifice everything, including her own life, just to delay it, not even defeat it. But this is AJ here at the Hero Informer, and let's get into it. So we pick back up where we left off with Diana trying to face this giant Tetracide, which is an ancient Greek being of unimaginable power in ancient horror, all while it's being broadcast across the city on the news, where we see at the museum somebody very specific watching, a woman named Barbara Minerva. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, well, she becomes more important later on. Just know that she has a couple words she needs to say to Wonder Woman. And speaking of Diana, we cut back to her right now, as she heads back to the military base to brief everybody about what's going on. And yes, she wasn't able to do anything meaningful to the Tetracide, she just used a little bit of her magic to slow it down, buy them some time. But the Tetracide is very resistant to her magic, because Wonder Woman can't really fight this thing. The best she can do is essentially slow it down for everybody else to escape and get out of the city. As she tells all the military personnel, before you leave, and yes, you should all leave immediately, it's important I tell you how this Tetracide kills, so you may have any hope of fighting it after it has killed me. Because yes, Wonder Woman is fully intending to lay down her life here just so these people in the city can escape to live another day, because she knows she can't meaningfully fight this thing, only delay the inevitable. But for now, she goes on to explain just how serious this situation is and what exactly is the Tetracide, as its name, the Tetracide, quite literally means the four killer, as it kills in 4 different ways: death of fear, death of mind, death of body, and death of soul. And of course, one of the people in the background goes on to say, death of fear doesn't sound so bad, but as Wonder Woman continues to explain, that's their greatest danger currently, especially given that this Tetracide has emerged within a city which is a heavily populated area. Because the Tetracide isn't like Godzilla, it's not going to go within the city knocking down buildings or whatever have you. It draws its prey to it. You see, this 4-step process starts with it emitting a special kind of sound, starting the death of fear process, because as she goes on to further say, death of fear means that you are no longer capable of feeling fear when you see it. Instead, you are drawn to it. So very soon the Tetracide will begin to emit a sound. It will travel for miles, and when people hear it, they will be drawn to it like bees to honey, and they will do anything to be one with the sound, literally straight up walking into the Tetracide's jaws, where the death would be agony, and then that starts the other 3-part process: death of your mind, your body, then your soul. And from this point forward, death of your soul is the worst one, because yeah, you can die naturally, but then once the Tetracide absorbs and breaks down your soul, you're going to experience agony eternally. So yeah, you can see why this is a pretty extreme deal. And we can assume Wonder Woman is no different. If she unfortunately gets within the jaws of the Tetracide or captured, she will go through the process all the same like any other normal person. And with that all said and done, Wonder Woman then sets off. She says her brief goodbyes to Steve Trevor and her very own Pegasus to initiate this giant battle. And you know, for what it's worth, I've seen a lot of correlations between this version of Wonder Woman and Kratos from God of War. Maybe that's not too far-fetched, as they are based on Greek mythology. But as she starts zooming around this giant titan, stabbing it, trying to contain it, or at least slow it down, initially she is seeing some success, but the thing is just too powerful, as it just throws away her giant sword, with her then pulling out a secondary weapon, getting in close, chopping off limbs. But unfortunately for Wonder Woman, it seems like her limbs are next, as she got too close where the Tetracide is able to grab her. But before we can move forward with that and see what happens here, we have to get a little bit of understanding, so we move right back into the past, back underneath into the Wild Isle, which I mean is essentially hell for Wonder Woman, you know, where she was born and raised. But we see back when Steve Trevor got trapped here, and more of their adventures trying to get him out, with them fighting the Hydra, and eventually they are successful in defending the shores of her home place. In which here we see Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor bond a little more, not only on with Steve coming from a completely different world, but Wonder Woman even seeing the goodness within Steve and the hero he is. And so sometime later, within their little home, Wonder Woman is reading a very special book, because above all else, she wants to be a hero and do what's right, and try to get Steve Trevor back to normal Earth, back home. And so after sending him out, just getting some wood or whatever, she goes on to question her mother, her adopted mother Cersei, about a specific spell she found inside of a magical book. But this isn't no ordinary spell. You see, even though this seems like a very guaranteed and surefire way to send Steve home, the price for this magic is extremely high. And so at first, Cersei goes on to say, Diana, you don't understand, this isn't just a small sacrifice. But Diana says she knows and she's read it. Cersei still thinking Diana doesn't understand what this fully entails, but still she insists that she knows and she's willing to commit. And you know, Wonder Woman being one of the beings within the DC universe to have extreme will, and if she puts her mind to something, she's going to complete it, even against the wishes of her mother figure here. We see just that, cutting over later that evening inside the dead of night, with Cersei getting up out of her sleep, sensing Diana being near as she just sits by the fire, completely alone, and as we will find out, she has done something drastic. As when her mother asks her what is she even doing up this late, Diana says she just couldn't stop thinking about it. about who is she supposed to become. If Diana is this great warrior and someday supposed to be an even greater one, a savior of humanity as Cersei tells her, then she cannot fail her first mission for humanity. Because in her eyes and her understanding, she doesn't just see Steve Trevor as a man misplaced, a good man not supposed to be here. She sees it as a test for herself, a mission that she has to complete. Because how could she go on to do above greater things if she can't solve this one problem in the here and now? So for the Magic able to send Steve Trevor back, it needed a very big sacrifice, one that Diana fully knew and was willing to make. As we find out, she did just that, sacrificing the dominant arm of a great warrior, herself. Thinking this price to be high, and as we find out it very will be, she did almost the unthinkable, sacrificing an actual part of herself for the greater good and for the future to come. What she deemed was necessary. And could you imagine having to cut off your own arm from the socket? Like, I can only imagine the willpower that would take to not give up halfway through, but to actually see and knowing what she needs to do. And I don't know in the main continuity if this has ever been explored, but has Diana ever been a Green Lantern? I feel like Batman and Superman have been explored more within the story of them becoming lanterns than Diana, even though she definitely meets the requirement of incredible willpower to become a very proficient and powerful lantern. And if she hasn't, I just don't know, let me know down below. And so because that sacrifice was definitely more than enough and met the requirements for the magical process that they were going through, later that same evening Diana and Cersei began the process and actually send Steve Trevor home. As even Cersei, her mother, goes on to say, she had known Wonder Woman was exceptional for very long, but even still she underestimated her capacity for love, her capacity for sacrifice, and for honor, and how Diana, this child, would change the world. Which also is another interesting point, that even though this absolute Wonder Woman story is completely different than any other version of Wonder Woman before, you can still very clearly see that, well, this is still Wonder Woman. She still shares all of her normal similarities that any version of Wonder Woman should, you know, her heroics, her capacity for good, defending the weak and innocent, her skills and determination, all of it is still there, just in a slightly different package. Well, maybe not slightly different package, you know, enormously different package considering the events here and everything in this absolute universe, but you get my point. Moving immediately back to present day though, now knowing not only how Steve Trevor got off of that island, but the sacrifice that Wonder Woman made, literally losing her arm permanently, we see how that affects her in the present. How when the Tetracide grabbed that one arm, she utters a simple phrase and disintegrates it, because the arm that she had now, that was over her normal, you know, off arm, was just simply made out of magic. Which again is another very interesting point, is that this version of Wonder Woman uses a lot more magic than, you know, normally she would. And that's obviously because, you know, her mother, instead of being Hera, she's more of a magic user than what she usually is portrayed as. And with her being able to break herself free, she then goes back to the military base with all the other personnel where she can explain and give an update to what's happening. And at first, everybody is concerned like, Diana, you're missing an arm, are you okay? But she reveals to them that she hasn't had the arm for a while and she can get it back, it'll just take very complicated magic. But for now, because she neither has the time nor the resources to do that here, she then pulls out a simple replacement, a kind of derpy, wonky looking metal arm like the Winter Soldier would have, and places it on her little stub to use as a makeshift prosthetic arm for now. And as Steve Trevor himself is here looking at this, he finally clicks two and two together. He realizes what happened and what Wonder Woman sacrificed to get him off of that island in the very beginning. But there's no time to think over anything that is happening because the Tetracide itself is getting ready to emit the sound, so everybody has to move and move now. Evacuate an entire city of people, which is almost an impossible task, but they have to try nonetheless. So as Wonder Woman heads back outside to go and further confront the Tetracide, she is met by a smaller body hitting her on the side. You know, the Barbara Minerva from the beginning. And here we are left with a lot more questions than what are answered. Because one, yes, Barbara Minerva in the main DC continuity is actually Cheetah, you know, the arch enemy of Wonder Woman herself. And secondly, she actually calls Wonder Woman Wonder Woman. That is the first time anyone has either referred to Diana or called her Wonder Woman specifically. And the reason why she calls her Wonder Woman is because that's what the Amazons called their champion, the absolute best among them. So this means a couple things. One, for whatever reason, somehow Minerva knows Diana here is an Amazon, something that Wonder Woman herself doesn't know too much about, because she was dropped off and severed from the Amazons as a literal baby. And secondly, now that Wonder Woman knows this, she knows that Minerva here, who is traditionally Cheetah, her arch enemy, but not in this universe so far, she knows that she is going to have to come back to her and see what else she can tell her about not only herself and the Amazons, meaning an unlikely teaming up or duo. But for now, she has way more pressing matters to take care of as she goes to confront the actual Tetracide once more. But as she is here, at first she starts to doubt herself, thinking that this is futile, this is impossible. Against these odds and what has already happened, there's no way that Wonder Woman could even do anything to slow it down. How she would break upon fighting the Tetracide and die, leaving no one left to fight for these people. But she's going to go through with it anyway because she sees no other path. Well, that is until she pulls something out of her magical, almost infinite sized bag, a very specific potion, that she thinks of a new plan inside of her head and how maybe this could work. Maybe this is better than just a suicide run against the Tetracide to slow it down momentarily. But because this new plan just doesn't involve direct conflict, she has to figure out a new way to let the entire city know what she's about to do. But lucky for her, there is a perfect way for this, as she sees a couple of news anchors and news crew on top of a random building just surveying the scene. And here she directs a message to everyone within Gateway City. And so before they go live and show everybody what she's doing, she draws a little circle on the floor, telling them not to record this part, mostly because she doesn't want people afraid of what's going on. New things are often scary to people, and a frightened populace will serve no one. And the other reason is just a lot of magic is just sacred, and not everybody has earned the responsibility to wield it. But with that done and that ready, they then broadcast live to the entire city. As she goes on to say, "Hello, my name is Diana, and I'm afraid I need your help to save the city. You see, there's a terrible monster on your beach now called the Tetracide, and I've been trying to fight it, but it is very powerful and beyond me. The military is trying now to evacuate you, but there is simply just not enough time. Soon, the Tetracide will begin to emit a very specific sound, a sound that will compel you to sacrifice yourself to it. Now this next part here, it is what is crucial to her entire plan. As she goes on to say, this will be difficult to hear, but you need to understand, to save you from your fate, I'm going to briefly make you and the entire city deaf." Yes, that's right, because what is a better solution than to fight against a monster who uses sound as a weapon than to take away sound from the equation entirely? And of course, you know, if a random woman on TV just goes on to say this crazy stuff, not everybody's just going to believe her, so Wonder Woman decides to address this personally herself, with her further continuing to say, "Many of you do not believe me, but I assure you you're about to become believers. If you panic, the chaos that it will bring will almost be as deadly as the Tetracide itself. So, I need you to be calm. I need you, especially those of you who are hearing this message now, to help your friends and neighbors. Kindness and compassion are all that will save us now. You see, I came here to save your city, but today it will be up to each and every one of you to save your city instead. Wonder Woman believes in you," actually taking the name and moniker Wonder Woman, using it for herself, to not only inspire the people listening, but to save the entire city. And so with that done, she tells the people to keep the message on loop, and she smashes the potion down, activating seemingly a giant dome around the city, one that will completely cut out any sound coming to and from, making everybody within its borders deaf. Yes, it's going to cause major panic, but it will save them from the giant, powerful Tetracide, allowing Wonder Woman to safely fight this thing one-on-one, and still presumably lose and die. But for now, we don't get to see that as this issue and video comes to a close. If you have enjoyed, leave a like, or subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.